Ancient Roman medicine.
Aren't the Romans similar to the Greeks and the Egyptians? I know they had lots of gods and empire and were from a similar part of the world.
True, there's certainly a clear overlap between the two cultures, but there are also distinct differences.
I guessed as much. So what are the key points that I need to know?
For a start, while the Romans thought that they were better than the Greeks, they did share the same god of healing.
What was his name again?
He was called Asclepius.
Oh yes, I remember now. So did the Romans copy many of the Greek medical ideas then?
Well, to start with, the Romans were very suspicious of the Greeks.
Why was that?
As the Roman Empire expanded, it took over cities that had been owned by the Greeks. Greek doctors were forced into slavery. Consequently, many Romans were worried that they might try to get revenge by poisoning them.
I think I would be suspicious of my enemy's doctor.
Yes, you would need to be careful. But health was an important issue for the Romans. If they were to have a strong empire, they would need a healthy civilization.
That's true. It would be hard to conquer new lands if you weren't feeling well.
Exactly. So over time, the status of Greek doctors improved, and finally Julius Caesar allowed doctors to become Roman citizens in 46 BC.
So Roman medical practices would have been very similar to those of the Greeks.
I suppose so, and the key medical man of the Roman era was in fact Greek.
What was his name then?
He was called Galen and was trained as a doctor who had studied Hippocratic methods. Galen developed the idea of observation through dissection. For example, Galen worked out that the spine controlled the rest of the body by looking at human remains.
I thought that Romans weren't allowed to dissect human bodies.
That is correct. Although it was strictly forbidden to dissect human bodies, Galen took every opportunity he could. Bodies were available for the determined. Many convicts were displayed as a warning to others, and certain cemeteries were prone to flooding which exposed the corpses.
Sounds disgusting. I don't think I'd like to be a Roman doctor.
Galen also studied animals and compared their bodies to those of humans.
Sounds logical.
But studying animals doesn't always work. For example, Galen thought the human liver was a different shape than it actually is because of his observations of animals.
But he was on the right track.
Yes, but his practice was flawed as his ego got in the way. Galen would only record successful cases and ignored all failures.
Which meant that he would never learn from his mistakes.
And because he was considered to be such an authority on medical affairs, no one dared question his ideas for hundreds of years.
That's some reputation.
But to be fair, he did write down his findings in over 100 books, which would be used as the basis of medical practice for the next 1500 years.
So important steps were made, even if misconceptions could not be amended.
Yes. And the last point about Galen is that he developed the idea of the Four Humours and came up with a theory of opposites.
Which involved?
Well, for example, Galen thought if you had a fever, your body should be cooled. Or for a cold, he might prescribe a hot bath.
Sounds logical, but it's not going to cure the plague.
But hygiene is one key factor of Roman medicine. Public health was something that the Romans took very seriously.
I know that they had public baths and they built sewers, but what other steps did they take?
The Romans were in many respects a highly civilised society who had many important ideas about hygiene.
But they had gladiators that hacked each other to death. That's not civilised.
True, but as well as the sewers and baths that we've already mentioned, they had aqueducts, lead water pipes and public toilets.
And they had roads.
And the roads led to good communication, which would help spread good medical practice.
And they could move their armies around on them.
Yes, which all links in. Remember, a healthy army and population was essential to a successful Roman Empire.